This might be really controversial. I don't know if I should say this. I'll say it anyways. I'm really 30 years old now. Sounds crazy to even say that out loud, but yeah, I'm Unc. I'm officially Unc now. And I had to create this video because when I was in my 20s, I always watched people in their 30s giving advice to 20-year-olds. So now that I'm 30, I have some experience. Now I feel like it's my turn. And before I even start this video, I would just like to give an apology to anybody I call old, auntie, Unc when they were 30. I truly apologize. I realized I was wrong. So with that being said, let's get started. I'd like to start with dating and relationships. So sorry ladies, it's more on the guy side since I have more of understanding of the guys, obviously. When you're dating, think with this head, not the other head. Because the reason is there's a lot of people who spend time in relationships for 5 to 10 years based off starting a relationship off sex, right? You're starting a relationship off lust. So you think that you really like somebody, right? You're in the honeymoon phase. You guys are in together for 2 to 3 years. But then things go wrong. The honeymoon phase goes away. And then you realize, you guys aren't having sex. And then you realize, like, wait, you guys really don't have a lot in common. But you don't realize that when you're having sex. When you're having sex, like any little thing that you disagree with, you don't really care. You look the other way because you guys are having sex, right? The sex made everything better. But now that you guys aren't having sex, you see the person for who they truly are. So my advice is, if you're dating somebody, please do not have sex. Vet them completely, because your judgment, if you have sex with someone, it completely clouds your judgment about the person. So my next advice is start a business or start a side hustle, right? As you become employed in your 20s or your teens, there might be moments where you become unemployed, laid off, fired, or anything of that sort, right? And there's going to be moments where you become stressed because you're trying to find money. But if you start a side hustle, you start a business, you're not worried. Not because you kind of have a direction of where to find your next source of income. For example, you can start, let's say, a plumbing business, a cleaning business, or services. Start a services-based business because it's easier to find clients and make money, start up quicker. Because, for example, let's say someone wants plumbing. You don't have to know even how to do plumbing yourself. You can find somebody that knows how to do plumbing, and you could subcontract the person, and then you put out ads on Google Ads, Facebook Ads, Craigslist, and then when somebody needs a job done, you send the person out to go do the job, and then maybe you guys can do an agreement, like, let's say, I don't know, you take 20% of the job, 30%, whatever. But either way, because you started that business, you found another source of income while you're laid off or while you have no job. So it's really important that you start a side hustle or business so you're not worried about the next check. My next advice is, this might be common sense, but eat healthy. Like, younger generation is completely lucky. They have a lot of resources, right? Growing up, I used to work out all the time, go to the gym, run, but I kept getting fat and fatter and fatter, and I'm not understanding why. It might be common sense to others, but to me it wasn't, and that is, I wasn't eating healthy, even though I was working out, right? Now, a lot of people back then had that issue, but we didn't really have the resources like the internet, like YouTube, ChatGPT, to tell us, like, hey, you're supposed to have a calorie deficit. In general, just eat healthy. Just people explaining, like, to lose weight, it's they say it's what, like 20% exercise and then 80% your diet. My next advice: be physically active always. Make sure you do cardio. Make sure you do something for your heart health, right? Make sure you lift weights also for your physical health, because both are really effective in helping you, but they both serve different purposes. So you want to make sure you're working out to build your muscles, build your body for protection, or just for general life. But also you want to make sure you have endurance, make sure you're healthy, make sure you can even go for walks, and make sure you do long jogs, or even like do stairmasters or walk up the stairs, just practice, but work on your endurance, your heart health. So my next advice is to just save money little by little. Even, if it's like $20 a week or $25 a week. Save money. Hopefully you have a job. But growing up, I grew up in hustle culture, on social media. So we grew up with like, man, if you're not making $10,000 in a week or in a month, you're not making enough. So what people used to do, especially like people my generation, for example, let's say they get $100 from their job, they'll throw into stock options, hoping to, like, let's say they flipped $100 to like 1,000, right? So instead of taking that profit, instead what they do is they take the $1,000 and deposit the whole thing again, hoping to like flip it to maybe 2,000, 10,000, whatever they were aiming for. And what ends up happening is they end up losing everything. If you try to make fast money, you also lose fast money. That's the name of the game. So here's the thing. There's a lot of 30-year-olds right now who are currently completely broke. But had they been just investing, let's say, $25 a week from when they were the age 20 to age 30, they would have had at least like $13,000, right? If we say 520 weeks, if that's that for 10 years, 520 weeks times 25, yeah, it should be about 13,000, right? Yeah, I believe so. I'm not good at math. But yeah, had they just saved the $13,000, they would have been worrying or being on the edge or even stressed out, for not having any money. So take your 20s, especially if you're 20 right now or under 20, to just save a little bit. It compounds. So when I said $13,000, I was only talking about just what you saved. I didn't even talk about the interest or the profits. Let's say you throw your money into the stock market. Let's say you leave it into the SPY for the next 10 years, probably worth $20,000. So you only invested 13 and you made 20K in profit, 7K in profit. I had to look at my fingers real quick and count. My next advice is, if you go to school, make sure you try everything, because you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what you like if you've never tried it. For example, I went to school for computer science. I realized computer science wasn't for me. I didn't really enjoy it. And then one day I took a e-commerce class, a business class, and I fell in love. And I realized, okay, business is for me. But before that, I was like, business? I don't want to do business. I want to work in Google. I want to work at Yahoo. I was going to say Yahoo. They don't even exist anymore. Well, I want to work in Microsoft. I want to work at Meta. And now that I took that one class, I realized I fell in love. I'll never forget, my professor was from Nigeria. I remember he was always like going to London, bro. Mind you, we were taking classes in New York, but he was always going to London like every weekend. I'm looking at the professor like, Professor, how do you have money for this? How do you keep going to London every weekend? But this is before like the rise of like Zoom and all these these apps to like communicate. But what he did was he was selling hair. He would get human hair and then sell them, in the UK, even Africa, even Latin America. That's what he did. But he needed to get the shipments. Like he always get the shipments to the UK and make sure that it gets sent down to like South Africa, Nigeria. But he needed to like, just show presence. And he was making so much money from that. And yeah, that's how he was able to afford to just even travel every weekend to London from New York. Next advice, network early or network all the time. Because you have no idea how effective networking is. For example, I'll give you an example, right? Let's say I need Chris Brown to perform at my birthday party. This is just an example. I don't personally know Chris Brown, but what I can do is I know somebody, I'm friends with somebody that knows Chris Brown, so I contact him, I network with him. I say, hey, I need Chris Brown at my event. Okay, cool. Chris Brown, the person I network with contacts Chris Brown. Chris Brown then contacts me. That's the name of the game. You have to network. 'Cause you don't always need to know someone like a celebrity. You don't need to know them directly. It's very important to know the people that's correlated with them. For example, the example I made with Chris Brown. You don't even know Chris Brown, but at least try to know his security guard, network with his manager, network with his family members, something like that. You don't need to know him directly. Just networking with his peers close to him is enough to reach the success or to reach the results that you need. All right, my next advice is about friendship. Do not take disrespect. Do not take disrespect. Um, as you get older, your circle naturally shrinks, right? Um, Personalities change. You know, let's say you're 18, you're 20. Remember, they say your frontal lobe doesn't completely form until you're like 25 or 26 as a man. So the way someone thinks at 18 or 20 won't be the same way someone thinks at the age of 25 or 26. So when when both people change their perceptions on life, friendships, split. So it's important that you get to know yourself, recognize yourself, and find friends that are find friends that are able to match you, because you are who you hang out with. I know you've probably heard that so many times, but literally, if you hang out at a barbershop, eventually you're gonna get a haircut. You hang out with smokers, eventually they're gonna say, hey, you want to smoke one? And then you might say, okay, I'm just one, because you're there all the time. And then boom, that's how you get hooked. And then even drinkers, maybe you might not be a drinker, but you hang out with people at the bar all the time. You're just always there, and then eventually you're just kind of like, I'll just take one, and now there you go, drinking all the time. That's how it starts. So even though I gave some negative examples, the same works vice versa. You hang out with people who are really successful. And when I say successful, let's say financially, it's an example. You're going to always feel the need to always be like, man, I need to do better. Because let's say your friend acquired a business, and your friend paid $100K for a business that's generating $5,000 a month. And now you're just like, man, I need to do the same thing. So now you're trying to also acquire other business. It's so many examples to give, but it's important that you just always keep yourself in the right circles, because you are who you hang out with. My next advice is to diversify your income. This is similar to what I was saying earlier about starting a business or a side hustle in case you don't, your job fires you or something like that. But when you invest, right, whether that's the stock market, crypto, real estate, whatever it is, you name it, right? It's important that you don't put all your eggs in one basket, because as the saying goes, you put your eggs all in one basket, you accidentally drop your basket, not all your eggs are broken, right? It's now same goes into business investing. So you want to make sure, like, let's say you have $100, right? And let's say your investments are your business, crypto, stocks. I don't know. Give an example. I don't know about the fourth one, but you want to make sure it's all divided equally, because if one of them doesn't work out, that's okay, because now you're getting paid from the other one. For even business, for example, let's say you start a cleaning business. Now the cleaning business is kind of slow, right? And let's say you put all your money in that cleaning business. So now you're not really making nothing because you just threw all your money in it. But have you put 50-50, maybe you put your money in the cleaning business and in the plumbing business. Now the cleaning business is going slow, but because you have put the other money in the plumbing, now you're making money from the plumbing. So you're not worried about where the next check is coming from. So you need to make sure you always diversify your income. And my last advice is to stop chasing overnight success. Oh, and maybe I should add, don't compare yourself to other people. And reason why I say that is because, again, social media, it's feeding young people this illusion that you need to be successful overnight. In real life, it doesn't work that way. You can see, for example, people traveling. Like, you might see somebody traveling around the world, right, all the time. You're like, man, and you're probably in your apartment in New York City, struggling at your minimum wage job, let's just say. Don't compare. You don't compare. People all have their own circumstances. We're all given a different deck of cards when we're born, right? So, for example, that person who's traveling, maybe they were born rich parents. You can't compare. You weren't born rich parents. You can't be comparing. Or maybe They finished school on time. You know, maybe they had, again, maybe they had rich parents and they were able to finish school on time, and now because of that, they were able to travel. You can't compare, because now your time is soon. Maybe you finish school in the next 5 years, and now you're traveling too, just as her. Maybe she stopped traveling because maybe maybe she started a family, right? Or maybe, who knows, whatever. But the point is, your time will come. You don't ever compare, because there's a lot of people on this internet and just in general showing their highlights of their life. They don't ever show the negatives. So you don't ever compare your life with others. Enjoy what you have. You know, for example, the other day I was visiting a friend, right, and he was telling me not to judge his home because he lives in the projects in New York. And I was like, why am I judging you? And he said, because he lives in the projects. And I said, bro, you could have been homeless. You have a home. What are you talking about? Like, don't judge you live in the projects. There are people right now wishing and praying to be in your shoes to have a shelter. They're wishing. There's people putting applications right now, living in the shelter, hoping to live in the projects, and you live there, bro. Come on. Stop comparing yourself to other people. Don't feel bad of your circumstances. I was always told, if you ever want to feel better, and this is gonna sound bad, but if you ever want to feel better, always look at somebody doing worse than you. Don't ever look at somebody doing better than you. Look at somebody doing worse than you. Then that sounds so bad, but because it's like, if you're complaining about your living situation, you look outside, look at somebody living in the street. They're wishing to be in your living situation. You get? Or even, let's say you're complaining about your car, like, oh, I got a piece of doodoo car. So there's people outside wishing they even had a car. They can afford it. They're like, damn, this person got a car. I wish I had a car. You get? So we can't be comparing. Enjoy what you have. And last but not least, I think I'm just end it there. Actually, and last but not least, this might be really controversial. I don't know if I should say this. I'll say it anyways. Don't wait till 30 to have kids. If you have kids before, please do. They say you shouldn't have kids until, you're completely ready, but it's no such thing as being ready. People are going to say don't have kids until maybe at least over 25 or 30 because you're going to suffer. And to be fair, you're going to suffer at any age, right? If you have a kid at 21, you're going to suffer. If you have a kid at 30, you're going to suffer. You're going to have a kid at 40, you're going to suffer. Your level of suffering just changes, right? So maybe at 21, you're suffering because you don't have the funds, right? The resources. At 30, maybe it's because you're always working. You're tired. 40, you're older. You don't have that energy to be dealing with kids. So you suffer no matter what. And I think this like propaganda to get younger people to stop having kids, and I think that's done by intention. Again, this is I know this is what I'm saying is controversial, but I think it's better if you have kids at a younger age so you're not really suffering older. Because in my honest opinion, it's better to have a 20-year-old child at 40 than to be having a 20-year-old child when you're like 65. Because there's a big trend of people having kids now at the age of 35 or 40. Like, this is like a big common trend now. So yeah, if you can have kids when you're younger, yeah. So that's just my advice. That's just my personal opinion. I listen to me. I'm just some guy on the internet. But yeah. So guys, if you watched this far, thank you so much. Please like, please comment. I really appreciate it. I just need you guys to like it so it can promote me on the algorithm. I appreciate it. Have a wonderful day.